Good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you for your patience on the water. My name is Hallie Verzee. I'm the Wildfire Communications Manager here at Pacific Power, and we're so glad to have you here tonight. Before we get started, we're going to have the Oregon Public Utility Commissioner, Ms. Lisa Tawney, is going to come up and give some opening remarks.
Good evening, everyone. It's such a gorgeous evening out here. I really appreciate you coming and spending time indoors to talk about wildfire, even though it's such a glorious spring evening. Appreciate you taking the time. So I'm Commissioner Lisa Tawney from the Oregon Public Utility Commission, and most of you probably don't know what that means. We are a state agency based in Salem, and our job is to hold the utilities that are owned by investors accountable. We do that on their safety and on the rates that they charge. We have a host of rules and guidance for them around how they should approach wildfire mitigation. And one of those rules is that they engage with their communities. And so a few of us are here tonight to sort of see how that's going. How is the conversation with communities unfolding? What are the resources they're bringing? And what are the questions you're asking? So that we can go back and we can think about whether what we're directing them to do is really sort of working for reaching communities where they are. So it's a real pleasure to be in Grants Pass tonight. I have in-laws here, so we're down regularly with the grandkids to make sure that everybody gets to see everybody. I don't usually get to come down here for work, so it's really fun to do something in the community that's more rooted in how you're spending your days and living your life down here. We all know, we have seen across the West how absolutely devastating any ignition can be under the wrong circumstances. And we've all been working together, communities, the PUC, the utilities, to mitigate the potential risks. And as we saw in California this winter, that's really hard and also critically important. And I know I don't need to explain to you all how absolutely important it is that both communities are preparing and the utility is preparing, that we're all doing that together. The way the PUC engages on wildfire is we have set out rules for what should be in a wildfire mitigation plan from the utilities. They file those plans with us, and our team of experts review those plans. We also hire an external expert who looks at the plans, provides advice on where they could improve, how should they mature next year, be better next year, and where are they doing well. We also review the money that they're spending. So what's really important, Pacific Power is spending a really significant amount of money re-engineering the system for these new fire conditions. It's really important that that money is spent as efficiently as possible, that we're getting as much risk reduction for every dollar that we possibly can. So it's the PUC's job to review all of those expenses before they can be recovered in your rates, before they end up in bills, to make sure we're really getting everything that we possibly can for the customer dollars that are being spent. And then finally, we have a safety team that does a lot of auditing. So our safety team has eyes on the high fire consequence lines every year. 100% of those lines get inspected by our teams, as well as, of course, the utilities teams. And then about half of the other lines in the system. We're looking for vegetation management, we're looking for safety issues on the lines, and we're also tracking issues like worker safety. Are the linemen safe? And Oregon has one of the best records in the country on that. So we're really proud of what our safety division does. We're unique in the West for having that much audit capability out in the field every year. And we use all the data that they bring back to work with the utilities on where they're doing well and where can they continue to improve. So that feedback loop is critical given how fast the risk is changing. I know many of you have probably lived here a long, long time. We've always had fires. but not fires like this. And so given how that risk is changing, it's on the PUC and on the utility to be trying to figure out how do we get out in front of this changing risk. So that's part of what you're here tonight to listen to. I'm going to just sit and listen with my colleagues, listen to your great questions. I'm available afterwards if anyone wants to ask us questions. We're happy to, and I know you're in good hands with the Pacific Core team, so I'll hand it back. But thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. In addition to Commissioner Tani, we actually have several of our Pacific Power team members here. Some of them are based locally right here in Grants Pass. So I just want to take a second to introduce you to some of them. We have our area manager, Steve. Just wave your hand. There you go. I have our regional business manager, Alan. Thank you. There you are, hiding in the back. Our local emergency manager is Holly. Thank you. We also have our operations director, Mike. All right. We have our fire and emergency response managers, Tyler and Lloyd. There's one. There they are. Okay. We also have vegetation management. Anna is here. And then from our Pacific Power leadership team, we have our Vice President of Operations, Tom. Our Senior Vice President for Power Delivery, Kurt. And Pacific Power President, Ryan. In addition to that, I know we've seen some of our local public safety partners joining us here tonight, so thank you so much for being here. We couldn't do what we do without you. In the back, we also have the Oregon Department of Human Services, Office of Resilience and Emergency Management. Sylvia's back there. She's got some wonderful information about preparedness, not only for wildfires, but year-round, so definitely be sure to stop by and see her. We also have our customer service team here tonight, so if you have any questions about your account, want to sign up for alerts, anything like that, they're here throughout the evening to help as well. So I've introduced some of our team that's here for Pacific Power, but I also want to introduce the other presenters up here with me. Again, my name is Hallie Frazee. I do the wildfire communications for Pacific Power. I also have Melissa Swinson. She's our Director of Wildfire Mitigation. And we have Nora Yatsov, who is our Director of Emergency Management. I will say we are down one member of our team. Chester, who is our senior meteorologist, is at home. He's got 2 sick kiddos and his wife's recovering from surgery, so I'm not quite as exciting as he is, but I will be covering some of that content for you guys tonight. So as we kind of look at what we do for wildfire mitigation, we kind of group these activities into different buckets or areas, and we'll be covering a lot of those tonight. This is just kind of a high-level overview. The first thing we'd like to talk about is our situational awareness. So this is understanding what's happening right now, using data we've collected over the last 30 years to help us make good informed decisions about the fire risk. This is what our meteorology team does. They focus on making those forecasts for us. So I'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a minute. Our operational practices refers to how we operate the system safely and possibly a little bit differently when we're in those high wildfire risk conditions. So we'll talk a little bit more about that with Melissa. Probably one of the most visible things that you see in your community is going to be what we call our system strengthening and resilience. This is rebuilding lines, putting in new equipment, using smart devices, sectionalizing different parts of the area. And we've got some good information about all the projects that are happening here locally that we'll cover. And then kind of underlying all of that is our engagement. So that's, again, like the commissioner mentioned, that's why we're here tonight. We are trying to get to as many of our communities here in Oregon as we can before wildfire season starts. We want to make sure that you're informed about what we're doing, but also about what you can do to get ready for wildfire season. So I want to talk a little bit about the Grants Pass service area. You can see this map up here. It's very purple. Normally it's more blue. The blue shows our service area, but the purple area shows what we call our fire high consequence area. And you can see most of the Grants Pass area is purple. So these are areas that we've identified that we know have a higher fire risk. So in these areas, we know that if there were to be a wildfire, the consequences or the effects from those could be catastrophic. And Part of the reason I want to point this out to you is because when Melissa is up here talking about the different measures we take, and when Nora's up here talking about preparedness, just understanding the risk in your area is really important. But just a high-level overview, we have about 280 miles of distribution lines. These are the lines that come down to your house that bring you the power. A little over 170 transmission miles. So these are the larger power lines that are bringing electricity from our generation sites, then down to our substations, and then to our distribution lines. And then we have about 7 substations in the area. And so I mentioned, I'm not Chester. I'm not I'm not nearly as charming as he is. He's one of our meteorologists. He was a former TV weather guy, so he's very good at this. But I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about what we do for situational awareness. Like I said, it's just like it sounds. It's being aware of what's happening right now. It's being aware of what's happening in the near future, so 5 days out. It's also taking that information we've gained historically to look at how we make decisions on how we operate our system every day. So here at PacifiCorp, we are one of the first utilities in the West to have a team of in-house meteorologists. So these are meteorologists who work directly for us. We have 5 right now. We should be back to 6 shortly. We're in the process of hiring another one. So we have a team of meteorologists that for every day of the week, every day, weekends included, holidays as well, 365, they are making a weather forecast for every service area that we cover. So it's not just a forecast for all of Oregon, it's down to every service area that we have. They make a forecast that looks at the weather. So what kind of conditions do we expect to see? Is it going to be raining? Are we expecting any impacts from wind? Things like that. But they also put together a fire forecast for us. So what is the risk level today in this service area? And this forecast also includes the information looking about 5 days out, so we can start to plan ahead. And we talk about that we may operate the system a little bit differently in wildfire conditions, and so this forecast plays a critical part of that. It tells us, okay, we see that we're approaching, it's getting drier, the risk is increasing, maybe we need to operate the system differently. Maybe we need to turn on some of those enhanced safety settings. Or in very extreme cases, are we approaching conditions for a public safety power shutoff? And Nora will cover that a little bit more detail. So they're not just here for fire season. Our meteorologists work year round. In the winter, we're concerned about wind, we're concerned about ice storms. We know that those impact, communities across our service area. But from spring to early fall, we are laser focused on wildfire. That is our #1 concern across our service area. Obviously, the risk differs a little bit depending on where we are, but that is where we are focusing our attention. And so you can see some of the tools that we have at our disposal on the screen here. One is called Wildfire Analyst. This takes the data that we have about our service area, what we know about the assets, what we know about the climate and the topography and what kinds of things we have going on there. And it tells us what kinds of things could happen if we were to have a wildfire in this area today, or if we were to have a wildfire in this area in the next 5 days, and what that would look like. And so we're using this tool all the time to simulate wildfires, to see what can be done, so we can make the best possible decisions for our customers and communities. We also have what we call our WRF model. This is looking at our weather patterns in the area. Are we expecting high winds? How dry is it? How cold is it? What does that fuel moisture look like as well? And we do a lot of this with our own weather station network. So you can see on the map, there's a lot of little blue dots. There's a whole lot of them here around Grants Pass. Those are weather stations that we have. There's about 35 in the area. We also have a couple of orange dots that you'll see up there. Those are our planned weather stations for this year. So we're going to be adding 12 more by the end of 2025 in the state of Oregon. And so these weather stations are spread out throughout our service area and are providing us with real-time weather data. We're able to use this weather not only for ourselves, but we're sharing it with our public safety partners. We're sharing it with the public. We also take in data from other weather stations that aren't ours. So maybe weather stations that belong to the county or the National Weather Service or other entities that are tracking weather, because it's really important for us to be able to tell what's happening exactly in our service area. And so if we have one weather station, but it's on the other side of town, that's not going to do us much good. So we need to have multiple weather stations throughout our service area to be able to track that weather patterns really efficiently. As I mentioned, this is available to the public. We have a great website. It's called pacificpowerweather.com. You can go check that out today. Later this evening, you can actually click on and find the weather station closest to you. And it's really kind of cool. You can see what the weather's doing right now, but we also show you the historical data. So you can see what is the most windy conditions we've ever seen, right here by your house, or what's the driest, or what's the most wet conditions. And you can kind of learn to identify when conditions are approaching those high, thresholds. You can kind of say, okay, the risk is going to be a little bit higher now for me for wildfire. And so you can kind of have an idea of what to watch for yourself. Again, we have this great team of meteorologists who work together every day. We have a forecaster on duty 24/7 for, emerging weather threats and things like that. And they're definitely putting together a forecast because we want to make sure our communities are safe. But if you're interested, if you're one of those people who really likes to nerd out on the weather, we do make this available to you. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at that when you have a minute. And so mostly we've been talking about what we call kind of our short-term risk assessment and what we're looking at, weather-wise. But we have actually been able to take 30 years of data about the fires that have happened in the area, about the climate change, about what the system looks like, what we have operating in the system, climate data, and we've put that all together into our own model that we use to forecast for wildfire risk. We have a lot of really smart people. We have data scientists working with us. We have our meteorologists, but we also partner with, data analysts and things like that outside of the company. So like the National Fire Data Rating System. So they put out forecasts all the time for different areas. So we're taking in the information from them. We're taking information from National Weather Service, from NOAA, from the National Interagency Fire Center, and all of those are feeding into this model in addition to all the information we're providing it with our own weather stations and our own teams. And so we're able to create this really kind of impressive model that can show us what would a wildfire do if we were to have one, but also what are the chances of a wildfire given the current conditions. So we're looking at how hot it is, how dry it is, how windy it is. Those can make a huge impact on the scale of a wildfire. The relative humidity, has it rained recently? Has it not rained in over a month? What kind of impacts does that have? Those top wind gusts, those speeds, just one of those pushing into the lines, that can have really serious impacts. And so we're constantly looking at all these different variables that affect, our fire weather forecasting capabilities. And so as I said, this is kind of a high-level overview. You can actually see a demo of our wildfire modeling capabilities over here at a wildfire booth. We modeled what the Smith River Complex fire looked like from a couple years ago. So you can kind of see and learn a little bit more about how we do that. But I'm actually going to hand it over now to Melissa, who's going to talk about what we're doing to improve and strengthen our system.
Thanks, Hallie, and good evening, everyone. I'm Melissa Swenson. I'm Director of the Wildfire Mitigation Delivery Team at Pacific Power. I'm very happy to be here in Grants Pass. It's my first time here, but I will say my prom date many, many years ago was from Grants Pass, so a little bit of relationship, affinity for the town. So I'm going to talk to you about what we are doing to make the system more resilient to hazards. And what we're talking about are hazards are things like wind, limbs, trees, balloons that are flying up in the air that happen to hit lines. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the tools we have in our toolkit to help do that sort of system strengthening. And you can see actually some of the examples over here at the booth if you want to stop by afterwards and take a look up close at more of some of those tools we have in our toolkit. But some of the things we do to do system resiliency is do things like put in cover conductor or aerial spacers or fire-resistant poles that mean that we can make the lines more resistant. So when we talk about what cover conductor is, and that's one of the things on the board over there up at the top, if you're driving down the road and you're looking at power poles with lines on them, most of the time it's bare wire. So what we do, and what happens with bare wire is if something hits it, like a balloon or a limb or something like that, it can cause a fault, which can cause an outage, or it can sometimes cause a spark. So what cover conductor does is put a layer of insulation over it to protect it from those sorts of things hitting the line. So I'm not an engineer, but I think of it very much like appliances where, you know, in your home, your toaster isn't just a bare wire plugged into your outlet. It's got a layer of insulation over it to protect it from things hitting it, you guys accidentally tapping it, me accidentally tapping it, and causing a spark. Very similar sort of concept for cover conductor, just a lot more voltage going through. We also have things we call aerial spacers, and what those do is hold the wires apart. So if you could think about when the wind blows really hard, you don't want the wires to have the opportunity to hit together. So aerial spacers will hold those wires apart, so if the wind blows, they'll move together instead of slapping against each other. And then when we're doing these cover conductor projects, we're also looking at making sure that the poles are more resilient to fire too. So we'll put in fiberglass or steel poles to go along with that cover conductor. So we're replacing the wooden poles, putting in some poles that are more resilient to fire. And then we'll also look at things like putting in smart devices, which we'll talk about a little more in a minute. But those are things that make sure that they're relays and reclosers and communicating fault current indicators. So don't try to say that 5 times fast. But they work in relationship with each other. So those relays and reclosers sit on lines, and they can be more sensitive or less sensitive. But what they do is they detect taps on the line. So think of those balloons or those tree limbs or leaves that are potentially tapping the line. They can shut off the power in fractions of a second. Very, very fast, because the faster you can shut off the power, it reduces the risk of a spark. So they're listening and feeling for those taps in the line and shutting off the power. The fault indicators are communicating back with our operations center to tell us, hey, the power went out over here. Please come and take a look, because if the power's off, we're going to send someone out to patrol before we turn it back on. We want to make sure the line is clear before we turn anything back on. But having those communications with those fault indicators helps us understand where it is so we can get out there quicker to see what's going on. So now I want to show you some of the work we're doing this year in Grants Pass and down into the Cave Junction area. So over here on the left, you can see the circuits from north of Grants Pass all the way down to the border of California. We are doing system strengthening on. And right here in Grants Pass, we're doing about 100 miles of cover conductor system strengthening work this year. So that's a lot. And you can see with all the colors, those are all different circuits that we're working on. And over on the right here, you can see where we're doing some of that system automation, where we're putting in those relays and reclosers and fault indicators. And those are really important things to put in, because what they do is not only are they listening and trying to shut things off more quickly to reduce the risk of ignition, but the more we have on a line, the fewer we can try to minimize the number of customers who are impacted by an outage. So if you think of like there's only one of those on a line, if there's a tap, everyone down the line, the power gets shut off. If we can put more of those relays and reclosers on a line, that means fewer customers down at the end may have an outage. So if you're further down and the relays are further down, maybe a fewer of you. Still not great to have an outage, but fewer customers are impacted by it. So wanted to show you the work that we're doing here. We also have on our website, and we can show you after the presentation, some more information on our website about those projects we're doing in Grants Pass and in the Cave Junction area. So on a regular basis, we're also doing things around vegetation management. And we know that that's a very popular topic, and so very glad to talk about it here. So vegetation management, really what it's about is looking from the air and also the ground for things like limbs and lines, vegetation close to our lines, vegetation under equipment, as well as hazardous trees. And what we're doing in areas of these high fire, high consequence, all those areas in purple around Grants Pass, is going and making sure that we're going out more frequently to check for issues and making sure we're trimming back across our right-of-ways. And we're also doing things like pole clearing. So if you think of all the poles and you think of, we want to make sure that the vegetation down underneath those poles is kept to a minimum. So if there's a spark, there's nothing when it hits the ground that could potentially cause an ignition, particularly in the middle of summer when it gets super dry. And we're also looking for trees that may be out near our equipment that may be diseased or dead, or maybe a limb that's looking a little sketchy, and making sure that we're taking care of that as well. So along with vegetation and checking for things around vegetation, we're also looking at our equipment and doing regular inspections of our poles and lines and substations. So we do this more frequently in the fire high consequence areas, looking to make sure there's no issues, and if there are issues, making sure we're taking care of those safety issues and those issues that could cause what we call an energy release, a spark, to making sure we're taking care of those first. And then this year, across our entire service area, regardless of if you're in a fire high consequence area or you live in Grants Pass proper, we are doing safety patrols and doing visual inspections of all our equipment to make sure that we are finding things if there are issues and making sure we're taking care of them. So now I want to talk a little bit about how we are operating our system safely. So Hallie was talking about the work that the meteorology team does to understand what our forecast looks like both today and say in the next 5 days, and what those conditions could look like that could create a fire risk. Because our approach is, as the risk goes up, so does our response. So we want to be proportional in our response and make sure that we're taking the right actions on how we operate our system to make sure that we're staying safe and keeping you all safe. And just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, Commissioner Tawney talked about, we are seeing increased fire risk and activity across the West. And last year, there were more than 2,000 fires in Oregon that burned nearly 2 million acres. So we were #1 in the nation last year for acres burned of fires. I don't want to be #1 again. And I know the National Fire Center is saying the forecast in the state of Oregon is very similar to last year, so we've got risk. And so we want to make sure we're operating our system safely to manage the risk around our system. And so that could be things like placing those settings on circuits, those relays and reclosers, to be more sensitive. So if there is a fault, we shut off that power, and that's known as enhanced safety settings. De-energizing circuits when there is fire that's coming too close to our equipment, so those are called emergency de-energizations. Or as a last resort, a public safety power shutoff when the weather forecast and fuels conditions are forecast to create an extreme fire risk. And Nora's going to talk about that in a little bit. So let's watch this video to explain a little more about how we might use enhanced safety settings and emergency de-energizations and public safety power shutoffs to prevent wildfires.
At Pacific Power, we're committed to providing the safe, reliable service you count on every day. During conditions such as gusting winds and hot, dry weather, and in areas near trees and other types of vegetation that could ignite, we need to take certain steps to prevent wildfires and reduce their impacts. While these safety measures may interrupt your service, they can prevent catastrophic wildfire events. Let's look at 3 of the ways we help protect communities and prevent wildfires. The first is enhanced safety settings. During times when wildfire risk is elevated, we will adjust the sensitivity of some of our equipment. With these settings activated, our lines will de-energize within fractions of a second if a line is contacted by debris, wildlife, or strong winds, reducing the risk of a fire ignition. Because of this, there's an increased potential for power to be disrupted and remain off until field crews can visually inspect the lines before power can be safely restored. Next is the public safety power shutoff. Hotter, drier, and windier weather conditions can create heightened wildfire risk, and we may carry out a public safety power shutoff, or PSPS, shutting off power to specific targeted areas. A PSPS is done in partnership with local public safety partners. If a PSPS is likely to occur, we attempt to notify customers that power may be turned off and to keep affected communities informed throughout a de-energization. Once we've determined that the fire risk has passed, we will safely re-energize lines and restore service. Emergency de-energization is another wildfire prevention method that may result in a disruption of your power. When an active wildfire moves close enough to threaten burning into our lines or equipment, we will begin monitoring the fire closely to evaluate its potential spread and impact to our systems. If the fire is moving too close to our equipment, we will complete an emergency de-energization of our power lines. This process helps us prevent additional wildfires and protect first responders. Here at Pacific Power, we're dedicated to keeping our customers safe while delivering the power that our communities count on every day. During times of extreme weather events, when wildfire risk is at its highest, our wildfire prevention measures will help protect our customers and the communities we serve. To learn more, visit us at pacificpower.net/wildfire.
So as we've been talking about and what you saw in the video, we could turn off the power in a variety of circumstances to prevent wildfires from starting or to reduce the impact of ongoing wildfires. But we also understand that those practices have an impact on all of you. And so if you look up here, these are some of the impacts of some of the operational practices in a 25-mile radius around Grants Pass last year. So the red are enhanced safety settings related outages, and the blue are emergency de-energization related outages. So we had 4 emergency de-energization related outages. That was for wildfires that were getting too close to our equipment. And we had over 600 enhanced safety setting related outages. So we know that's an impact on all of you. Particularly if you happen to be on a circuit that maybe have multiple outages, that can be very disruptive. But safety is our top priority, and if we have to choose between safety and reliability, we're always going to choose safety. But we also know that you guys want to know what's going on. So we want to know to let you know what you can expect during wildfire season from a communications perspective. So when we place a circuit on enhanced safety settings, we typically do it for the season. So you will receive an email or a letter from us at the beginning of the season when if we place your circuit on settings. So as of today, we haven't sent any notifications out. We haven't sent anything on sensitive settings yet. But if we do set your circuit on one, we will notify you, and then we'll notify you when we take it off at the end of the season. And if there are outages on a circuit set on enhanced safety settings, you'll receive a notification like a standard outage notification based off how you want to get that information, whether it be through text, phone, or email. And if you aren't sure if you have alerts set up or if you aren't sure you have them set up the way you want, Adrian and Marcos and Ismari back there at the customer service desk can double check for you tonight after the presentation and make sure that you are getting your notifications the way that you want them to be set up. For emergency de-energization, so remember, this is for active fire coming near our equipment. If we have time and it's possible, we will send you a pending de-energization notification. Again, text, phone, or email. If we have time, we will definitely tell you. But if we don't, and when de-energization occurs, we will send you an outage notification, letting you know that the outage was due to an emergency de-energization. And if it's a longer-term de-energization because the fire is still going and emergency response needs some time to get it tackled before we can re-energize, we'll continue to send you regular updates on a regular cadence. We also had feedback from a lot of you last season that you want more information about what's going on. So one of the things that we are doing, and this is going live this week, is on our outage map. If you go to our outage map that's online, if the outage is on a circuit with enhanced safety settings, it'll give you a little symbol that says that it's off because of enhanced safety settings up there. And if the power is off and out due to an emergency de-energization, it'll also show that as well. And then you can click right where that outage is and get more information. So we heard from you all that you wanted to know if that was, why the power was out. very reasonable question to ask. So we wanted to make sure we have that information on our outage website, our outage map for you all. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nora to talk about public safety power shutoffs and preparedness.
Thank you, and I want to take the time to thank you guys for coming out. I can see the sun out there, and it's probably, not your favorite to be indoors when it's so beautiful outside, but thank you for being here and wanting to hear about what we're doing and wanting to learn about how we're improving our practices to keep you safe, and also caring about your community, because after all, this is all about making sure your community is safe, your friends, your loved ones, your family members. So I really appreciate your time on this. Melissa mentioned that I was going to talk about public safety power shutoff, and I have a few short quizzes for you tonight. How many of you are familiar with what a PSPS is? Okay, great. We've had one in Oregon. That was September of 2022. It was pretty widespread throughout Oregon, a lot of areas, but really it's when we have such extreme conditions that it's no longer safe to operate our grid, and we have to shut the power off. And those are really extreme conditions. We're talking about dry vegetation. Everything has dried up in the summer. Live and dead fuel moisture is really, really low. We're talking about winds. We're talking about very hot temperatures, and then a potential impact to the community. So when all those conditions come together, that's when we start considering a public safety power shutoff. Unlike the enhanced safety settings or the emergency de-energization, a public safety power shutoff will be planned. It won't be a reaction to a circumstance that impacts our grid, but it'll be planned. Our meteorology team will let us know 5 days in advance, is usually when they have a pretty good idea of potential public safety power shutoff, and then we start getting a better idea of which areas will be impacted, and 3 days out, we start working with our public safety partners. And thank you for the few that have come out here tonight in the back of the room and also up front here. We have our Public Utility Commission. We have Emergency Support Function 12, which is our coordination with the state. And we have local fire and emergency management, law enforcement that we work with. We do a couple of things 3 days out. We start figuring out, are there any facilities that are critical that need power? Facilities that maybe service vulnerable customers that have a need to operate emergency equipment. And if they don't have backup generation, we work together to make sure that they're able to continue to operate during the shutoff. We also look at, do we need to stand up a community resource center? And that, unlike a shelter, is open during extended business hours and into the evening, and it's a place to go get out of the conditions for those that lose power. So you can get out of the heat, because typically a PSPS is very hot and dry and windy. You can get out of the heat, get information, charge your devices, get refreshments, get on the Wi-Fi, get information from our customer service, even get medical support. So all those services are wrapped around in that facility. And it could really be anywhere. It could be in this room right here. If the impacts are close by, it could be a tent set up. As long as there's a parking lot or a flat area with access to it, we can set up a self-contained tent. So we start working to see if we need to get those services going. And then 2 days out, we start communicating with you, the customers. We want to let you know and give you some time to prepare that there's a potential that we may have to turn your power off. So you'll start getting messages from us, and we'll let you know at that time if we have a community resource center and where it is. We continue to communicate with you throughout the event at a regular cadence, and then at the end, we let you know when the power is back on. And that's for several reasons. If you chose to leave and if you're not at home, you know it's safe to return home and your power is back on. Also, if your power didn't come back on, then you can call us and we can troubleshoot and make sure we get your power back on. So a lot of communication with the public safety power shutoff. Again, it's really a last resort tool for us that we don't take lightly, that consideration, because we understand the impact. A couple of ways that I want to now talk about what we're doing to improve our response. You learned about our system hardening, building a resilient grid, but we also are investing in our human team too. Our emergency management team has grown greatly. We have Holly, who's your local emergency manager in the back, and she is local, and she has come with great experience. During this time of the year, when there's no severe impact, she'll be doing a lot of meetings, a lot of outreach, trainings, exercise planning. But during an event, she's in our emergency coordination center coordinating that response and making sure everybody's getting the resources that they need, and we're coordinating with the state, with the local partners, and then any mutual assistance that we may bring in. In addition to Holly, we've also developed 2 exciting teams. The first one is fire and emergency response managers, and these are seasoned fire incident management personnel that have a lot of experience working large fires, also regionally located, and they can be deployed out to a large fire. If we have a big incident that's going on for a long period of time, we can actually send the personnel there to work directly with our incident command, and that really goes a long way in helping us quickly recover. That they can coordinate access to do repairs and get the system back on. They coordinate re-energizing or de-energizing as the priorities of the incident commander changes, and so a great asset for us to have. And we have Daryl and Tyler in the room. Those are part of that team as well. And then lastly, the most important to me, and I think the biggest impact that will happen, is our Wildfire Intelligence Center. And I'm happy to say that they're located locally. They're in Medford. They're just a few miles down the road, but Nick is our Wildfire Intelligence Center manager right there in the middle. And he comes with great experience for us. He is building out a great program. We're going to be 24/7 monitoring live, getting real-time situational awareness, so that way we can make better decisions to more accurately energize, de-energize, and make sure that we have the best information available through all sorts of data sources. So standing that up, we've been doing it very quickly, and we're already operating near 24/7 time, so we're really excited to get this capability and really look forward to lessening the impact of these outages for you. All right, so now I want to talk about what you can do. How many of you have invested some time in developing an emergency plan or an emergency kit? Wow. That's probably the best response I've ever seen. Awesome, thank you. I'd say that's at least 50% of the room, if not more. Great. I mean, you understand, and we have Sylvia back there from our partners, Oregon Department of Human Services, with great information. For those of you that may not have had time or the ability to, I highly encourage you to think about this after today. And if you know somebody that maybe hasn't invested time in there, a plan doesn't take any funding, it just takes time. There's a lot of free templates online. It's having that conversation with your family, building that comfort and resilience, and knowing that you're better prepared to weather any type of disruption. It doesn't have to be a big emergency. It could be something small, like you lose your phone and you have all of your contacts memorized or written down somewhere. I know if I lose my phone, I don't know most of my contacts. So simple things like that, right? Writing down, where do you meet if you can't meet at home and you can't access your home and everybody in your family is separated? What kind of medication do you have? Financial information, a variety of things like that. An emergency kit is a little bit more complicated, and I encourage you to maybe take some time, but you can build it piece by piece. You know, get your water together, get some shelf-stable food that you may want to actually eat, not, the stuff that comes in those meal kits that may not taste great. Do you have pets or kids that you want to take care of? Having items from them. Anybody in your family that may need additional assistance. So those considerations, take some time, but when you have those conversations with family and you make that effort, it really goes a long way in making sure that you guys, and especially children or vulnerable family members, aren't scared when a disaster happens. So, last question for you is, how many of you have land or are fortunate enough to have land and practice defensible space? That's awesome. Wow, super awesome. Defensible space is a fairly straightforward concept. The closer you have vegetation to your home, the more smaller and the more sparse it should be. It can be something that takes some funding to put together, or it can be labor involved. So Depending on which practices you choose, highly encourage you to take a look at your landscape at home. We have handouts here available for you. There's also a lot of information online through Oregon Department of Emergency Management as well in the State Farm Marshal's office. But taking a look at what you can do. You can either invest in things for your home itself, shingles that are fire resistant. You can close off vents, a variety of different things that you can do. But defensible space has been proven to work and save homes when wildfire comes through. So encouraged to your capability to take a consideration for that. And then one last thing I want to talk about, what we have available for you is we have a website where we've put all of our information together to make it easier to access some resources that we have. If you yourself or you have a family member or a loved one or a neighbor that has a dependence on medical devices that rely on power, or if you have some access needs or functional needs that you require some extra assistance, whether it's through a device or whether it's through assistance from somebody else, we encourage you to go onto this website. We have a lot of programs available. One of the main one I'll touch on is the medical certificate program. It requires a doctor's note, but once you sign up as a medical certificate program, you qualify for a $4,000 rebate on a generator. So getting a generator for somebody that requires power for their medical device to keep them alive is one of the best ways to be resilient. And if you know somebody or if you yourself have that need, I highly encourage you to take advantage of this. It's a great opportunity to go a long way for yourselves in case the power goes out, and it doesn't have to be as a result of one of the things we talked about. It could be a wide variety of reasons. So we have information available for that tonight as well. And then I want to take it away. At the end here, we have Adrian and the customer service team available for you. If you want to please just verify your contact information, make sure it's up to date. Let us know how you prefer to be contacted. We're happy to do that tonight. You can also call the 800 number, and when you call, it's always a live person that answers the call. You won't get a phone tree, which is great. And then go on your account. If you have an online account, you can also log in and check your information that way. So please sign up for alerts. Please update your contact preferences. That's how we will communicate with you with all of these impacts. So that's my time. Thank you again for coming and caring about what we do and what you can do. Thanks.
Thank you guys so much. So we mentioned a couple of times that this is all found in our Wildfire Mitigation Plan. That's the actual document we file with the Oregon Public Utility Commission. It says this is what we're going to do for wildfire. So if you are interested in reading it, it's kind of a long document, but if you would like to peruse that at your leisure, you can find it on our website, pacificcorp.com/safety. You can actually view those for any of the states we operate in, or you can just scan the QR code up here. So that's going to be it for our prepared remarks. And now we'd like to open it up for question and answer.